Thanks to Jeff and our panelists. The governor's spokesperson sent a statement in response to our questions about the Attorney General's decision to take over litigation in the Yazzie Martinez case, saying in part, quote, "We have made clear since the Attorney General made this announcement that there need to be more eyes on school districts and how they are using or not using the resources made available by the state. The Attorney General should assist the state in that work to hold schools accountable. Over $4 billion, a 56% increase by this administration, flows through the PED to districts every year, and we know that districts continue to underutilize those resources." Now, to another situation the Attorney General is getting involved in, the disproportionate expulsions at Gallup-McKinley schools. Bryant Furlow's reporting for New Mexico In-Depth and ProPublica last December found that Native students are expelled from New Mexico public schools at a much higher rate than other children, and the numbers at the Gallup-McKinley district are driving that disparity. In an analysis of state data, Bryant and ProPublica found Native students' expulsions nearly doubled those of white students at Gallup-McKinley, and the rate is even higher across the state. The district has 1/4 of the state's Native students, but accounts for 3/4 of Native student expulsions statewide over 4 years ending in 2020. At the time of Bryant's reporting, the Attorney General said he found the data concerning, but just last month, Torres announced his intention to open an investigation into the disproportionately harsh punishment at Gallup-McKinley. Now, for the first time since that announcement, Attorney General Torres explains how he came to that decision and what an investigation might look like.
Okay, I want to move now to your decision to investigate the expulsion and long-term suspension rates at Gallup-McKinley School District. Why is school discipline so important to this larger conversation of public education in New Mexico?
Well, we have known for quite some time that there is disproportionate punishment, not just in New Mexico, but across the country for children of color, Native American, African American, Hispanic children, that when it comes to the rate at which they are disciplined, placed in detention, suspension, and expulsion. So, and we also know that the disruption of their ability to attain an education actually increases all sorts of really sort of difficult and oftentimes dangerous likely outcomes as adults. It's one of the root causes of the pipeline that we have from under-resourced communities to the criminal justice system and to jail. And look, as a district attorney and as the Attorney General, I'm trying to do everything that I can to limit the times that law enforcement is called upon to intervene in a situation with an adult who is either violent or dangerous or impacting public safety. And I will use every available tool to do that. And if that means going upstream and talking to school districts about their disciplinary policies and trying to figure out whether or not there's disproportionate impacts for communities of color, that's what we're going to do. And I have an obligation to try and do both of those things at the same time. We have opened an investigation with the McKinley County.
Can I ask you about that?
Yes, absolutely.
Gallup-McKinley Superintendent Mike Hyatt has said that he's not been notified of the investigation. Is that accurate?
He's actually been to my office, and probably since you've talked to him last, they reached out and we had an initial conversation, and we told them our plans. To their credit, they said they were willing to provide any information that they have and give broader context to the situation.
When was that? When did you guys meet, and when did you?
The meeting was within the last couple of weeks.
Okay, the last couple of weeks
that we've had this meeting, and
okay.
so and we will be following up with him to try and get access to the underlying data. Their contention is that there is some misunderstanding about the data. We haven't drawn any conclusions yet, but I was very clear that we intend to dig into this and try to understand what's going on.
Okay.
And
can I follow up with
the
Public Education Department has said it would share updated information with you as well.
Yes.
The investigation that we did, the story that we did, was only through 2020. Right. Have they shared that information with you? And if they have, what does the data show?
So we haven't gotten to the point where we've gotten updated data. And so the first step is to go out and sit down and look at the data that they have and bring it to, if necessary, an independent auditor to come in and look at this and see what is actually going on, and then compare that to the data that is being held by the state, because I know that there is probably some reconciliation that needs to be done there. But the point is that this is something that the Attorney General's office, frankly, should be actively engaged in. And I don't know yet, and I won't judge whether or not it constitutes a civil rights violation, because I don't have enough independent information to know about the quality of the information. But it's the fact that we're in this business that should send a powerful signal to school districts across the state.
Well, as you know, the governor pocket vetoed Senate Bill 426. That would have given you subpoena power. In this case, what can you do if the school district decides, I know they said they're willing to work with you, but if they decide not to turn over records, what can you do? What kind of tool do you use?
Well, so and I'm glad you raised that. One of the more disappointing aspects of the pocket veto is that it provided for what was called civil investigative demands. It's a discrete discovery tool that allows us to gather information before filing a lawsuit. We don't, unfortunately, now have that authority, and so we are left with the regular tools of litigation, which fundamentally means engagement through correspondence, communication that is informal, and that's what we're doing now with the school district. If it became necessary, we could certainly file a lawsuit and then gain access to that information
and go to force them.
And we would have to go and file a complaint and issue subpoenas and engage in the discovery process.
So it sounds like this, the pocket veto probably will slow down and hamper this investigative process if they don't comply.
Yeah, I think what was really not well understood is that, number one, we're going to engage in these investigations regardless. But what the legislation would have permitted us to do is to open discrete investigations without an unnecessary litigation on the front end, and without getting into this protracted fight over what kind of access we had to different kinds of information. It's a very short and discreet but powerful tool that we would be able to use. We use it in the consumer protection space all the time. And that's probably the biggest hindrance that we have by not having that legislation passed.
Okay. Have you or your staff begun to talk with Navajo Nation officials? Because Gallup-McKinley, basically, these are primarily Navajo students that are, the expulsion and long-term suspension rates. Have you begun to talk with Navajo Nation officials? And if so, what's their reaction been to the situation?
So we're organizing a trip to Winslow, Arizona, for me to sit down and have an extended conversation with the president of the Navajo Nation. This is going to be in the next several weeks, but it's not just about the disciplinary issues in that school district, but about issues related to criminal jurisdiction. There's been some real upheaval created by recent Supreme Court decisions, and also a number of issues pertaining to everything from cannabis to lots of other issues. But this will certainly be part of the conversation, and I know that the president and the leadership of the Navajo Nation is eager to have that conversation about the work that we're doing.
Eagerness to talk about this?
They have expressed a willingness to talk about all of the issues, and that's one of the other changes that's actually in progress right now in the Attorney General's office, is the establishment of the first ever dedicated Indian Affairs unit. We've never had that before. What we used to do is we used to send issue area attorneys to go and have consultation.
So in your office, you're going to establish this division?
That's right. Okay. And it focuses exclusively on the intersection of all of the issues in our office, from law enforcement to regulation to school funding, all of those issues that will be all centralized in one unit that is dedicated to establishing concrete government-to-government consultations in a way that is more structured and more nuanced, and really starts to develop this relationship over time, rather than sending different attorneys from the office to talk about different issues. Is try to understand the intersection between all of those issues in the state.
So beyond the expulsion and long-term suspension rates at Gallup-McKinley, are there other practices that you and your agency will look at Gallup-McKinley? Are there other issues or practices?
Right now, we are focused on the disciplinary issues, but as you can imagine, we talked earlier about Yazzie Martinez. they obviously have a keen interest in that, and they obviously have an interest in having a deeper appreciation and understanding of the role we're going to play now, assuming defense for the state of New Mexico. And so my hope is that we're able to resolve lots of issues, all for the betterment and to the benefit of the students in that community.